For the last 2 weeks, we've added something a bit different. I usually choose a stock of the day, but this last week and this week, I'm challenging our expert panel to come up with a stock that could change your life. One of those stocks that in 5-10 years' time, you look back and go, wow, that changed my financial life. It just zoomed up unexpectedly and was a 10-bagger, if like they say in the trade. How did I come up with this idea? I've been giving credit all the last 2 weeks to our good friend Henry Jennings from Marcus Today, because a couple of weeks ago, a stock came up here on a call called Archer Materials, and it's a company in quantum computing. And it was just fascinating. And Henry said, I chose this as my stock that could change your life in a little competition we had internally at Marcus Today. So I thought, as I always do, gee, that's a good idea. I'll steal a good idea and use it myself. And we have for the last 2 weeks. Henry Jennings from Marcus Today, welcome. And
hi, David.
It has been a lot of fun the last 2 weeks, and a lot of our expert panels have very nervously come up with the stock going, I haven't ever thought of it this way before, but it's been a lot of fun. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad you ran with the idea. It's not a bad idea, and it came off the back of one of our subscribers that took 156,000 into 12 million bucks in 2 stocks. So it wasn't a 1 stock hit, but it was 2 stocks, and has done extraordinarily well. We call him the $12 million man around here. So it wow. Can certainly change your life. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's we've come up with a few. Andrew Wielandt, your partner in crime, always great to have you from Toowoomba, from DP Wealth Advisory. It does make you think, Andrew, does it? If you had to pick one stock that could change your life.
Yeah, when I was doing this challenge, I sort of tried to look at it from a couple of frames. One was sort of saying what's been some of my best performers over the last 25 years and what were the attributes. And as we'll see in a minute, I just went out and chose something else. But it was a really good intellectual challenge. Like, yep. I seriously spent hours on this thinking, what would it be? So Henry, yep. Tip of the hat, thank you.
And it's interesting, it's reflected, which I think is a good thing, which is what the call's about, because our panels are all different and they approach investing from a different point of view. For example, Howard Coleman, yesterday at Team Invest, went for CSL. Now you go, really? You know, Howard, have you went down on that? But he said, okay, he's held CSL for years, and it turns $100,000 into $1 million every 10 years that he's had it. So he said, in my investment philosophy, that's a good way of doing it. Now, Gary Glover from Novus, he went through studies on growth stocks and there are he mentioned a couple of great authors, great books that he referred to that came up with 7 elements. So he decided to choose some stocks that would get close to those 7 elements, and he came up with Playside Studios, which he said is one I've never looked at before, but it just ticked off. He said, I learned so much from this exercise because it ticked 5 of the 7 elements, and it's the most he could get from any of the stocks he looked at, which is a video gaming business based in Australia that has deals with Disney and Pixar and things like that. So it's, Henry, it's sort of challenged people from their different investment philosophies as well.
Yes, I feel a bit like Keith Richards coming up with a riff for I Can't Get No Satisfaction in my sleep and writing it down. I've got to say, the amount of thought that I put into Archer Materials was no way in any respect with these gentlemen, Andrew or Gary Glover or Howard. I have to say, I looked at a stock in a field that is rapidly expanding, which is artificial intelligence, and more importantly, quantum computing. And the more I've looked into quantum computing, I mean, this could be an absolute game changer in terms of computing, not just for Archer Materials, but just for the globe. And Archer at a $200 million market cap is one of those stocks that could easily be $1 billion market cap given the opportunity if their if their qubit chip does actually work.
Yep.
And it's been worth going down the rabbit hole. And subsequent to coming up with the riff from I Can't Get No Satisfaction, I have done a little more work on Archer Materials, you'll be pleased to know, and a little more work on quantum computing. And it certainly does look interesting. It's up around 50% since we talked about this, Koshi, a couple of weeks ago. So it's off to a good start. I mean, I think, you're never going to change your life with CSL now. It's never going to be a $1 trillion company, whereas Archer, if this works, it could be $2, 3, 4, $5 billion company. Could be. It's a long way to go, but
interesting.
It's certainly been a good start. Yeah.
Now, Andrew Wielandt, did you wimp out on this going for an ETF? Explain to me why you didn't.
I did.
You did wimp out.
I did. Claudia, our new producer, said, well, I actually got him beforehand, went, here's a couple of weeks' notice, went, yep, no worries, I'll get to that. And then yesterday I went, oh, bother, I've got to come up with this name. And I didn't say bother, by the way. And I just went, what am I going to do? And, it's interesting you talk about Howard and being true to your investment philosophy. And as I said, I literally, JB Hi-Fi was the one that came to mind. So we bought JB Hi-Fi at $2.10, and where is it today? 50 something bucks. And, what was some of the attributes, that we liked about it? And I thought to myself, can I find a company, or two things, can I find a company that's like that? But more importantly, is that true and authentic to my investing style today?
Right.
And I just felt it was disingenuous for me. I'm not suggesting for others because, others are out there trying to pick winners. Is it disingenuous for me that, we run these ETF specials every fortnight? I'm on the drop with Andrew and Cara talking about ETFs, but, I come to you and I go, look, here's my one in a lifetime opportunity. I just went, that's not me. Okay. So I wimped out, but there is some method to the madness, Koshi.
Okay.
So I chose QUAL, QUAL. And you could say that it's cheating. I don't like to think of it like that. What I mean by that is the others, so we'll pick on Henry because it's easy to do. Axe will either do really, really well or maybe not so much. And I hope it does well, and certainly everything about Axe would make me think that it's going to do well, and certainly based on its price action, it's well on the way. Right. But it's one company. Whereas what QUAL does is it basically chooses the top 300 companies around the world that have success factors about it. So what I mean by that is it's got strong return, companies that have strong return on equity, companies that have stable to increasing earnings, and companies that have falling levels of debt. You'd have to think those three attributes are attributes of strong companies. But not all companies do that all the time. Companies, you think about BHP. BHP back in 2001 was $8. It was a basket case, went up to $18. $30, back to 18, back at 51. Companies move in and out of cycles. And I sort of said, well, if I've only got one chance to buy a company, I can only have one buy. Why wouldn't I buy an ETF that is screening the market every 90 days, trying to find the best 300 companies in that 90-day cycle and having those in there? Right. And as we just saw on the charts before, the performance has been pretty good. And if you compare it against the benchmarks, in this case, the benchmark is that Morgan Stanley Capital Index, the MSCI, it's basically outperformed the benchmark by somewhere between 3 to 4% per annum since inception. So it's doing better than the benchmark. I've got 300 companies in there. I'm not choosing one, and I'm staying true to sort of my training 25 years ago. My mentor said, hey, Andrew, here's some paper annual reports. How novel is that? And I want you to find for me, mate, I want you to find companies that have got strong return on equity. I want you to find me companies that have got increasing profit, and I want you to find companies that have got low levels of debt. So I've used that training from 25 years ago and in sort of today's philosophy or today's investment tools.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So the Archer Materials from Henry and the VanEck MSCI World Fund, which is ex-Australian shares.